The Utah Jazz are quickly becoming one of the most under-talked about, underrated teams in the entire NBA right now. Now, yes, I do know in the grand scheme of things, it is Utah, okay? Not much happens in Utah. Like, I understand why we don't want to talk about this bland state. But they have a damn good basketball team, and it does not get talked about nearly enough. And today I'm going to be breaking down why I think this NBA team is one of the most underrated in the entire NBA, and why I think the Utah Jazz deserve a lot more respect than they're actually getting for one of the quickest turnarounds when it comes to rebuild at least, in probably NBA history. So let's get to all that in this video without further ado. Now, the first branch of this team that I want to be getting into is going to be the young core that they have built up over the past 2 years. Now, when it comes to young cores, that's one of the most hyped up, talked about things on every offseason, but the Utah Jazz don't have the sexy ones like the Pistons, the Rockets, the Thunder, and those type of teams have. They have like the really cool and sexy young cores, okay? But then you come over here and look at Utah, and their young core stacks up with anybody else's young core, as they currently have Collin Sexton that kind of highlights it. Now, he's not the best player, I wouldn't say, on this young core, but he is one of the more high upside guys, and he is still only 24 years old, and he has tons and tons of elite upside. Now, yes, he didn't have his best year in his first year in Utah, but he still showed immense potential, and I think for sure Sexton, as far as his ceiling, it has not yet been reached, and he has even more to provide, especially on the offensive side of the basketball. And then you also have guys like Walker Kessler, who they just drafted last year, and at only 21 years old, he is legitimately one of the best rim protectors in the entire NBA. He made an all-rookie team last year, and he was, what, like the 17th overall pick? Like, he is an absolute steal, and any team would love to have a 21-year-old that can protect the rim and do what Kessler does at such a high level at such an early stage of his career. And Kessler, in my opinion, is one of the best young and up-and-coming bigs in the entire NBA due to where he's already at the defensive end, and his offense is even far better than we even expected coming in. So I think for sure, just those two players alone show great potential, and then you keep going down the list, it stays getting better, as they also have guys like John Collins, who they basically got for free, because the Atlanta Hawks have been trying to get rid of John Collins for years at this point, so they were able to get him at an extremely cheap price. And plus, on top of that, he had his worst year of his career last year. John Collins' price was at an all-time low, but now that he is on the Utah Jazz in a much better system with a much better all-around team-oriented way of playing, I think John Collins is going to be much better, because last year, let's be honest, DeJounte Murray and Trae Young shot almost every single shot for the Atlanta Hawks, and if they didn't shoot, DeAndre Hunter got a few. John Collins just wasn't getting the shots he was used to getting. And with Utah, now yes, he's not the guy, because Laurie is the guy, obviously, but still, John Collins is one of the better offensive power forwards when he's actually utilized correctly. And I think John Collins, with his athleticism and his offensive talent, I think is going to be a great addition to this Utah Jazz team. And once again, he is a very young player that still has tons and tons of growth to go. And then another very young player to go along in this young core, and I'm sorry in advance for butchering your name, they also have Ochai Agbaji. Now, yes, I know, like I said, I probably butchered his name, but he's a guy that was pretty high end going into his draft class, and he has shown very high, once again, offensive potential. And in the summer league, he looked excellent, like he is primed to make a year 2 leap, and he should get better and better. And with his extended playing time towards the end of last year, he showed tons of potential, and I think he's going to be a great scoring guard for them, and he's going to legitimately provide very valuable minutes all year for them, obviously barring injury. And then one of my favorite players they have in this young core is Taylor Hendricks, who they just drafted this year, and has potential to be the steal of the entire 2023 NBA draft class, as he is an elite two-way player. His defense is already elite, and his offense as well is at a very high level. And on top of that, he's a very good athlete. He has very good size, and I think overall he's going to be one of those players that any team would love to have. And with how young he is, he's not even raw, but he still has so much growth to go as well. And I think overall he is going to be a great player down the line, and maybe even have all-star level potential. And when you put together, they have great bigs in Lauri Markkanen, Walker Kessler, John Collins, and now Taylor Hendricks as well. I think this team is set up for prime position to keep growing together and getting better and better. And then another guy that's looking like the steal of the draft already from the summer league, and Keyonte George, he just had probably the best summer league out of anyone. And if they would have been a better win record team in the summer league, he probably would have won summer league MVP. And Keyonte George looked like an absolute beast on the offensive end. Now, yes, I still have my reservations. I I don't think he's going to be able to do what he did in the Summer League, obviously in the NBA, especially not from day one, but there's no doubt he's going to be an elite three-point shooter who can still make his own shot and make some plays off the dribble as well, and that is extremely valuable for a guy that's probably going to be coming off your bench. And then lastly, in this young core, they have Brice Sensabaugh, another player in this young core, and Brice Sensabaugh, he dropped very far in this class. I think he dropped to like 20th or something like that, and he is much better than the 20th best player. At worst, he is an elite three-point shooter, but at his best, he can dribble the ball, play defense, he's very strong, very athletic, plays with very high energy, and on top of that is an elite three-point shooter. And for that to be the third guy you drafted in your draft class is extremely impressive. And in my opinion, they may have had the best draft class in the entire NBA this year, as they added 3 players that should be able to come in year one and immediately make an impact whenever they get playing time. And I think their young core has strengthened a ton, and the Utah Jazz have been extremely impressive when it comes to acquiring young talent through trades and through the draft over the past few years, and their future is looking very, very bright. And I think you can stack this group of young guys against any other team's group of young guys, and you would be able to make a very solid argument that the Utah Jazz have just as good of a young core, if not better, than some of the teams that are more talked about in today's NBA. And by the way, that is the young core in my opinion, but that's not even mentioning some other honorable mentioned players on this roster and guys like Talen Horton-Tucker and Omer Stevenson. Okay, I know I butchered his name as well, but those 2 guys easily could be admitted on this young core as well. I just don't think their ceilings are nearly as high, and I don't think they'll be long-term impactful as much as these other guys on the roster. But even them, you could easily throw them into the young core and would even strengthen it even further. But then something on as well that a lot of these teams that have these elite young cores have, they don't actually have a great all-around roster. Now, yes, a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder, they do have a very solid roster, but like the teams like Houston and Detroit, let's be honest, no one's expecting them to even be in the top half of the NBA next year. Now, yes, I think the Houston Rockets are a much improved team from last year with the additions of Dillon Brooks, their young guys, and also Fred VanVleet, and I think their development is going to go a long way, and they're going to be a much improved team from last year. But I don't think they're going to be a high-level playoff team. I think at best they're a play-in level team, and even that is kind of a stretch. And then Detroit, I don't expect them to be in the play-in race at all. I think they're still way too young, and they don't have that many veterans, and they're still a few years away of development away from being that level of team. So I think both of them, although have tons and tons of young talent and great futures, right now their team is not really set up for that much of success. But if you look at a team like the Utah Jazz, they are very much set up for success because they already have their future star going forward in Lauri Markkanen. Lauri showed last year that he is a legitimate star in every aspect of the word, as last year he averaged 25.6 points per game, 2 assists per game, 8.6 rebounds per game, only 50% shooting from the field, and he just overall showed that he is as good as anyone in the entire NBA, and with his elite size on top of his elite offensive game, Lauri Markkanen is going to be something that every team has to deal with night in and night out for a very, very long time. And then even guys like Jordan Clarkson, who's a veteran at this point in the league, has developed into a legitimate 20-point per game scorer any single night, and he's an offensive weapon every team has to game plan for, taking pressure off of a star like Lauri Markkanen. And then on top of that, you still have guys like Colin Sexton, who has been a proven scorer in the NBA for a while now, and he's still very young and still has ways to grow, but even he is going to be helping take a lot of pressure off of guys like Lauri and Jordan Clarkson, and the teams will have to game plan for him because he is a proven commodity in the NBA. And the same goes for their power forward position when you have guys like John Collins and Taylor Hendricks. Now, yes, Taylor Hendricks hasn't proven himself in the NBA, but I think he will very, very soon. But someone like John Collins, outside of last year, he has been a top 10 power forward in the NBA, in my opinion, for years up until last year. And I don't think that's going to change. I think he's going to go back to that form and at least be a top 15 power forward. And on offense, definitely a top 10 power forward. And I think John Collins overall is going to make this team run much better as well. Once again, taking even more pressure off of their star level players and their good offensive players due to how talented he is as well on that offensive end. And then at the center position, you have Walker Kessler anchoring it all down, who is a very, very, like I said, elite defender in the paint, but he's also developing his offensive game. He has floaters, he has hook shots, he has a little bit of a turnaround game, not like a fadeaway turnaround game, but like the very basics of it. And even in college, although he didn't shoot it a lot, he did shoot about 1 3-point attempt attempts a game in college, so he does at least have the ability at some point to build off of a base of a three-point shot, so he might even add that in the future. So even Walker Kessler, who is by far their worst offensive player in their starting lineup, brings an elite defensive feel, and at a very young and very cheap contract at that, is just very elite to have value-wise, and overall the starting lineup just works. You have an elite defender in Walker Kessler, a very good offensive big in John Collins, Lauri Markkanen, who is a matchup nightmare for basically any team he goes against, Colin Sexton, who can get a bucket anytime, and same goes with Jordan Clarkson. And then off your bench, you have some very young, very capable guys, and guys like Keontae George, Bryson Zabal, Taylor Hendricks, and then you also have guys like Kelly Olynyk, who was very solid for them last year, and he looked like he's a very decent player, and he's developed very well over the past few years. And overall, they just have very good role players, and I think this team is going to be a very legitimate playoff level team going into next season. And from the development of this young core to the very legitimate team that they have put together over the past few years, all of this kind of comes together and makes this one of the fastest rebuilds and turnarounds of any NBA franchise. They were only 2 years removed of trading Donovan Mitchell, a top 5 shooting guard and a superstar level player in the NBA, and Rudy Gobert, one of the best defensive and rebounding bigs in the entire NBA, and a multiple-time defensive player of the year, trading both of those players away, along with tons of role players as well. And they're somehow already back to being a playoff level team. For most teams, that is 5-6 years of rebuilding that the Utah Jazz just did in only 2 years. And even last year, it's not like they were a god-awful team by any means. Now, they weren't a good team or a great team, but they started last year as they were the longest team lasting of undefeated, and they were a respectable opponent for any team they faced, and they could beat anyone on any given night. And that was last year before they even had all this young talent and all the development potential that they have with this team. So it just shows you from drafting, from trades to free agency, how smart of an organization the Utah Jazz are, and how underrated as well this team is, in my opinion. I think they're one of the best well-ran NBA franchises in the entire NBA today, and I think from their young core being underrated to the whole team being underrated, I think Utah has a chance to really shock a lot of people next year. But unfortunately, guys, that's from this video. So comment below, do you agree with me? Do you think Utah has the potential to be really good next year? What do you think they're going to be? On your thoughts in the comment section below. If you'd like to point, hit the like button and subscribe button in the world. I hope you have a blessed day. Could I have a blessed day? So you need to have a blessed day. All glory to God. See you in the next video. Goodbye. Boo. Blah, blah.